In today's world of market volatility and uncertainty, your retirement plans need to be front and center. With ever-changing tax laws, healthcare worries, and an unpredictable stock market, don't overlook the vulnerability in your retirement planning. Protecting your family and estate will be difficult with shifting policies in Washington. It's more important than ever to keep an eye on retirement.
Hi, and welcome in to a new episode of Eye on Retirement from the retirementhelp.com studios. Today, I want to share with you a story, a tale of two widows. Both, they loved their husbands deeply. Both of them trusted them completely. I guess I'm Dr. Seuss today. But those journeys after their loss, they couldn't have been more different. See, widow number one prepared. The first widow's husband understood something vital while he was alive, that our lives are uncertain. He knew that he managed all the finances, and he didn't want his wife left in the dark if something happened to him. So he took proactive action. He made sure that there was a plan, a team that she could turn to, and a process that would guide her through retirement decisions, the taxes, estate planning, and the healthcare. And when he passed away, of course, she grieved. But financially, she had clarity. She had confidence. She had help. Now, widow number two was unprepared. Now, the second story here is harder to hear. Her husband also handled everything, the accounts, the investments, the taxes. But when he passed away, she didn't know where to turn. She didn't even know what questions she should be asking. And because of that, she made the costly mistakes we see so many make. She paid more in taxes than she should have. She missed opportunities in estate planning. And she didn't learn what she needed to know until it was unfortunately too late. And until those mistakes had already cost her thousands of dollars, she was just oblivious. I call it the widow's tax trap. And here's something most people just don't realize. When you lose a spouse, the surviving one often moves from married filing joint to a single filer status. And that means their tax bracket can literally get cut in half. But here's the kicker. They're paying more in taxes on less income faster. I call it the widow's tax trap, and it's real. Suddenly, the same income that was taxed at a lower rate as a couple is all of a sudden taxed at a higher rate for the surviving spouse. Add in required minimum distributions, Social Security, and maybe even capital gains, and the tax bill can skyrocket, all while your income may have gone down. If you're not sure about your current retirement situation, don't wait a second longer. Pick up the phone right now. Schedule a 15-minute introductory call by calling 833-44-CORE4. It's simple, it's free, and it could save you thousands of dollars. Step one is clarity. Step two is confidence. But both start with a simple conversation. Coming up after the break, in the second segment, we'll be right back here after this commercial break talking with Lauren Dietz from Market Tax Services in more depth on this widow's tax trap. Stay tuned. You won't want to miss it. We'll be right back after this.
Out on the water, there is a moment. Perfect synchronization. The team working together in harmony to reach their goal. Now, imagine finding a team of financial professionals to help run your course down the river of retirement. Market Advisory Group is that team. Financial advisors, tax professionals, estate planning attorneys, and Medicare advisors. All in the same boat. If you don't have a team like this in one place, it can become a hassle to relay information between them. When you come to Market Advisory Group, we bring everyone together for you to get you answers in real time. to help make sure you don't miss something that puts your unique plan off course. You shouldn't be the one doing all the work to keep your retirement on pace. You should have a team in the boat with you. Your voice telling them where you're at, where you'd like to end up, and how you want to get there. And at that point, everyone falls into sync, all pulling in the same direction, toward the same purpose. Your retirement's financial security. We are Market Advisory Group, proud sponsor of Shocker Rowing.
Welcome back. In the last segment, I was talking about the widow's tax trap, and that's what I call it, and the importance of planning ahead and why it matters. Now, with a tax advisor, let's dive deeper into taxes with someone who knows this inside and out, Lauren Dietz from Market Tax Services. Lauren, thanks for joining us. Tell us about what's going on here.
Yeah, you're exactly right to call it the widow's tax trap. And from a planning standpoint, it's one of the most predictable and preventable retirement tax shocks that we see.
So I teased a little bit in the first segment on really what is all entailed here, but let's talk about what happens when you lose a spouse. What changes in taxes happen here?
There's a lot of different things to consider when you do lose a spouse. You're going to have a different filing status, first of all, which is a bigger deal than I think people think about. It's going to cut your tax brackets basically in half.
But that sounds like a good thing, but it's not
It's
because there's less dollars until you're hitting the higher tax rates faster.
right. So say, your income will probably lower a little bit, but overall, that same income that you were receiving, maybe you were in a 12% bracket. Well, a lot of times that's going to push a single person into that 22% bracket. And that's a big jump,
I mean,
10% extra in taxes.
most people don't realize this. They think, oh, my income has dropped. They don't adjust their withholdings, and it can be a surprise for them come tax time.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. People, they don't think about that until maybe the end of the year, or a lot of times once they get to tax time. And then at that point, it's really, there's not much we can do there's really nothing we can do about it at that point besides try to help them plan for the future.
Well, and I've seen it. I've been doing this for 21 years. I've seen it happen many times. You're not thinking about money. You're thinking about your loved one. You're grieving. You're with your family. And all of a sudden the reality sets in, and now you're down one Social Security check. So your income's dropping, but most people don't really understand that, oh, well, but I need to probably increase my withholding because I won't be in a married filing joint tax bracket this year. I'll be in a single tax bracket, and those less dollars in those lower tax brackets. But then furthermore, when you lose that Social Security check, that's when I see people go take retirement withdrawals out of the IRAs, the 401ks, which again, they're paying more in taxes
Yeah.
faster.
Yeah, it'll push them back into one of those higher brackets. And losing a Social Security check, that a lot of times is a big chunk of change in retirement for a single person or a couple. And it's not like your housing expenses are going to get cut in half along with that income.
The county doesn't call you up and say, there's only one of you living there now.
Right.
Just pay half the property taxes.
Yeah.
The electric company doesn't call you up and say, you know what, just go ahead and pay half that electric bill. You hit the nail on the head. The expenses don't drop. Now, when you have those pre-tax retirement accounts, the IRAs, the 401ks, those accounts that people have never had the taxes paid on them, those required minimum distributions, you still have to have those.
Yeah, they still keep clicking away. A lot of times when a spouse passes, that IRA is then transferred over to the
Surviving spouse.
Yeah, the surviving spouse. And if you're both already in that age bracket where you're required to take those minimum distributions, now you've got it's basically still the same amount of RMD to take, but it's just for one person, which again is another potential tax bomb that is going to affect people more than they realize.
Throwing some numbers out here, I'm just doing in my head. If you have a $2 million IRA And that first year, the amount you have to take out is over $70,000.
Yeah.
$70,000 in a married tax bracket could still be in the 12%.
Right.
$70,000 is not going to be in the 12% tax bracket for a single filer. It's going to be
No.
in the 22.
And that's before you're even thinking about the Social Security that they're receiving, or possibly pensions or
Interest or anything.
interest, dividends, all of that. Yeah, that you're most likely you're going to be basically at a 22% starting point if you've got those kind of required minimum distributions.
Now, I know this is the widow's tax trap we're talking about, but bear with me. How does this impact Medicare? Because you're a tax person. Why am I asking you about Medicare costs?
Because even though I'm a tax person, we still do try to keep an eye out on those lovely IRMA charges, which is basically a nice addition to your Medicare Part B and Part D premiums that you get stuck paying if you make over a certain dollar amount each year. And it's got a 2-year look back window. A lot of people don't even realize it. And then it's 2 years down the road, they're like, oh my God, what's this? And it's expensive. It can get very expensive. And it's something that gets triggered by just a single dollar over that limit.
And then you're costing yourself extra for your Medicare premiums. And it's almost like, I call it a sneaky tax, but
Yeah.
whose responsibility is it to keep up on that? Is it the tax person? Is it the financial advisor to make sure they don't send you enough money? Or is it the Medicare person?
Well, I think if you're working with a full team, we can all kind of look out for those types of things for you.
But if they're not, it's the responsibility falls on their shoulders,
Yeah.
the retiree. So income tax brackets get cut in half. So then you owe more money faster on less income. Do capital gains brackets get cut in half?
Yeah, it also affects those capital gains brackets. So that 0% bracket, it gets a lot smaller, and you get closer to hitting those 15 and 20% brackets a lot faster. So if you're trying to sell out of things, or you've got long-term capital gains you're anticipating selling off or realizing, then yeah, it's going to affect you.
So when my grandfather passed away several years ago, before that, he was shocked when grandma passed away several years before him that his charitable deductions were harder to use. Does that have an impact when you lose a spouse?
Yeah, that absolutely does have an impact. One thing that you can try to plan around when you are getting to those RMD ages is, if you are charitably inclined and you haven't really been able to itemize in the past, you can consider strategies like qualified charitable distributions to help lower your tax burden.
Now, in my tax class, I'll talk about the Roth conversions, and I'll say the ideal time to do a Roth conversion is while you're married, because you have more dollars in those lower tax brackets.
Right.
But when you lose that spouse, I'm not going to say tax planning is not worth it. That's not what I'm saying here. But certainly the time to maximize tax planning is while you're both alive and you have those larger dollars in those tax brackets.
Yeah, it's that sweet spot's kind of around those retirement years, those first few years of retirement where your income has decreased substantially and you are both still married and you've got this larger space available to be able to do some bigger conversions. It's not impossible to do Roth conversions after you've lost a spouse. It's just more likely that you're going to have a lot less dollars that you can convert without causing yourself a big tax headache.
Yeah, that's so true. And we didn't even get into the fact that the new senior bonus deduction.
Yeah.
You get $6,000 for single, but if you're both over the age of 65, you get $12,000. That's something that drops off
That
too.
would drop off, yeah, after the year that your spouse passes. Now, that's not a forever thing that goes through 2028, but it is a nice little bonus that, I mean, this year we've seen a lot more seniors be able to utilize additional tax planning and be able to convert larger amounts of dollars because of that deduction.
All gets back to tax planning.
Yes, it sure does.
So if you're watching this and you're thinking to yourself, so how do you know what questions to ask? What details should you share between your tax professional and your financial advisor? And like I said with Lauren here, don't forget the Medicare, it plays a role too. So if all these terms and law changes, if they feel overwhelming, don't wait. Schedule that 15-minute conversation with us by phone, or you can attend one of our in-person classes. That phone number to call to schedule that 15-minute introductory phone call is 833-44-CORE4, or visit retirementhelp.com, and you can schedule that call right there on the website. Well, stay tuned, because we'll be right back after this break with our final segment this week with Trey Bassa talking about Medicare and what you need to know as you turn 65 and make that transition. Plus, we'll share an interesting story about Bob and Gail right after the break. Stay tuned. We'll be right back with more.
Every client we work with deserves a custom-made plan to fit them.
We can take any situation that's thrown in front of us, look at what fears they may be trying to work through, and come up with very creative solutions.
We are unique to people that are seeking to try to have the complex things more simple.
We work together as a team. As an advisor, it'll come up with tax questions. It's great to have a CPA here in the office that can answer those questions and give them accuracy.
Market Advisor Group, proud to be local.
Retirement is supposed to be exciting, the reward for decades of hard work. But for many, it starts with a flood of questions. When should I take Social Security? How will taxes change when I stop working? What do I need to know about Medicare? And what happens to everything I've built when I'm gone? Retiring isn't just about leaving work. It's about stepping into a whole new season of life and making sure you're ready for it. That's why there's retirementhelp.com, a free online resource built specifically for people just like you. Clear, trustworthy information on the decisions that shape your retirement. RetirementHelp.com is here to empower you with the resources and education you need to retire with ease. What sets RetirementHelp.com apart from other resources is how we view retirement planning. We believe it takes a team, because taxes can affect Medicare costs, and finances can affect estate planning. We take a holistic approach to retirement, so you don't have to bounce around like a pinball to get your questions answered. We have articles designed to answer questions you may have, webinars that dive deeper into topics like Social Security and taxes in retirement, videos, TV shows, and podcasts exploring real-life issues retirees have run into, as well as daily updates addressing changes in the retirement landscape. Don't let doubt keep you up at night wondering if you're ready or not. Visit retirementhelp.com today and start planning the retirement you deserve.
When you're approaching Medicare, timing is everything. But what happens when your health history changes the rules? See, I met with a couple last week, and Bob's story is a wake-up call after a liver transplant. And he'll likely never pass what's called underwriting again, which means his first Medicare choice, it has to be the right one, right out of the gate. So what should you do before you hit Medicare to make sure you don't make a mistake that you can't undo? And joining me to talk about this is one of our healthcare advisors, Trey Bassa, to break it down. And Trey, thanks for being here today.
Thank you for having me.
So I want to set up this story here and talk about the couple that came in from one of my classes. Bob and Gail, they've done a lot right. They've worked hard, they've planned ahead, and one of them's even started Social Security. But Bob's health's curveball, it changed everything. See, he's immune suppressed. He takes specialized medications, and he still works for a school district because the insurance there, in his opinion, is better than Medicare. And when he transitions, there's no second chance here. If the plan doesn't cover his medications, or maybe even the premiums skyrocket, he's stuck, he's locked in. And that's why early planning matters. So I want to talk about what is the normal timetable for a Medicare decision here as someone's turning 65 or getting ready to come on to Medicare.
I think the most normal timetable is going to be 3 to 4 months in advance before they even have that starting point onto Medicare. Oftentimes people will want to sit down and have that conversation, learn what Medicare is, how it works, and how all of these policies will work together. But yeah, that 3 to 4 month time period, it just gives us that time to talk about all of those ifs, ands, or buts, talk about all of the possibilities that they can have for different policies.
So in Bob's situation, because he was on some very specialized medication, my concern as the financial advisor, knowing all these areas, my concern was that he needed to start, he was thinking about transitioning to Medicare probably next year. So he wants to work another school year. He loves the bus. He loves the kids. But when he was having this conversation with me, I asked him, well, do you take some unique or maybe specialized medications? And he says, oh yeah, because of the liver transplant. And that was my concern because I don't know what medications are covered by Medicare and what aren't, but there's all these Is it formularies? I mean, tell us what's going on with that story, because you know where I'm going with that.
I'm picking up what you're putting down. So oftentimes the first decision on the Medicare is the biggest one. They have to make a choice between two different kinds of policies, the supplement plan or the Advantage plan. But it's down the road where you'll be subject to underwriting and you'll have to answer these health history questions like, have you ever had an organ transplant? Or if it's not even if you've ever had one, but maybe have you had one in the last 5 years? And then they're going to ask questions about what kind of doctors and specialists you see, what kind of prescriptions you're on, and why you're taking them. And all of this to say that there is going to be a trail that Bob had an organ transplant, that there was some major surgery that Bob went through, and there's still repercussions today, whether it be reoccurring specialist visits, those prescriptions on the formulary that might be like anti-rejection, a little bit more expensive, things like that.
So my advice to him is yes, the normal time frame is 3 months when you don't have a complicated issue going on in the background. But because he's taking some of these specific medications, I've heard you and Corey and Presley and all the Medicare advisors we work with here sometimes advise people, if they're on these unique medications, maybe to go visit their doctor and get a list of the medications that they're on, come in and talk to you guys, see what Medicare is going to cover, because Medicare doesn't cover every prescription. And then that gives them time to go back to the doctor to maybe tweak those medications. But he needs to have a plan. He needs to not just hit it and say, hey, I'm not on insurance anymore from my past employer. Now I'm on Medicare. What's all this look like? He needs to have a better idea of those prescription costs and the options that he's facing in front of him.
Yeah, we sit down with folks and we take a look at that list of prescriptions. We run it through our quoting software and take a look at a bunch of different plans and scenarios with folks. When we're talking about those options, that coverage, ultimately it boils down to what is and isn't covered. And like you said, there's this formulary that's going to say what prescriptions are on their coverage sheet, what they're going to offer for coverage. And sometimes there's just one prescription that's too new. The brand name isn't covered by XYZ, or if it is covered, it's an exorbitant amount.
Yeah, I remember there was a story we talked about on our radio show where the premiums, I think Corey was telling me, was almost $17,000, $18,000 for the medication. It was crazy. So what happens if someone has a major health issue before they enroll in Medicare?
We have to seriously consider what those routes look like long term. On one route, we have that pay it up front kind of method where we know that we're going to have coverage and we don't have to worry about XYZ. The other route, it's more of a pay it later kind of method where you do have to start taking a look at who's in network, what is covered, what does this coverage cost when I use it.
So as he's transitioning from his employer's health insurance to Medicare, he doesn't have to go through underwriting. So I know, again, from being around you guys enough, I know that that's something that he probably might not get to have again, because again, the underwriting is going to ask these questions about what's going on in his health history, and the plan he picks might be the plan he gets for the rest of his life. And that's very important. So how do you make sure that first choice is the right one?
We have to sit down with every client before they make that choice and talk about their current list of doctors, prescriptions, all the ifs, ands, or buts, family history, their current history, and they have to ultimately be okay with the decision. I'm there to help facilitate the conversation, give them the pros and the cons of both routes, and work them through that decision-making process to make sure that they're okay with everything.
Now, where Bob and Gail were on our Core 4 report process, they were in step 2. They just attended one of our in-person classes around the Kansas City metro area, and they came in and realized they need that coordinated team because they were worried about making mistakes in their retirement. And that was almost verbatim what Bob said. But when you see people in situations like this as they're looking for help, what mistakes do you see people make when they assume they can switch maybe down the road or later?
I find that it's often just a lack of that conversation about how to make that switch. I think a lot of times people are under the influence of, oh, well, I have this ability to change every year. Well, that's kind of true, kind of not. It depends on what set of plans you're on. So It's all about education, making sure people know what these plans look like, how they can play out in a few years, as well as when we are talking about making that first decision, getting them comfortable with potentially this being their their one and only policy for the rest of their days.
Here was my concern. I was afraid that Bob and Gail, while they knew they needed help with their retirement, if they hadn't been working with a coordinated team, maybe I'd have just been a financial advisor and said, okay, yeah, move your investments to us. That's great. Ooh, I got a new client. But I couldn't have really been watching out for their best interest, which is what a fiduciary is required to do, to put the best interest of their client first. And what I find is so many people don't know the questions they should be asking. They don't know the areas they need to be paying attention to until it's too late. Do you find that happens a lot of times?
Yeah, we'll talk about what does XYZ look like, because my main focus is Medicare, but all of a sudden I'm talking about taxes and how much income they have leading up to retirement because they could pay more for Medicare Parts B and D.
You're talking about that IRMA, that income-related monthly adjustment amount.
There you go, nailed it.
The sneaky tax that Lauren and I were talking about. And these are all the things you need to be watching as a retiree. And unfortunately, most people don't figure it out until it's too late, until something's cost them a lot of money and a big mistake. And that's exactly why we created our Core 4 report process, to take a look at the 4 core areas of retirement. And if you're approaching Medicare, or if health issues mean you will need to get this information right the first time, don't wait. Call and schedule a 15-minute intro conversation. It's step 1 in that Core 4 report process. You can do that by picking up the phone today and dialing 833-44-CORE4, or you can go over to retirementhelp.com and schedule that call. Make sure your Medicare plan works for you from day 1. Well, that's all the time we have for this week's episode of Eye on Retirement. I'm Matt Goolsby, reminding you that we're here to keep an eye on retirement.